Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Protecting Small Business from Scams and Data Thefts. I'm Rebecca Chauncey, a business advisor here at the Illinois Small Business Development Center, or SBDC, at Build Bronzeville. This session is brought to you at no cost because it's funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the US SBA, or the United States Small Business Administration, the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, and the Urban Juncture Foundation. So pleased to have you with us. Just one housekeeping note. Today, if you have questions, you should type them in the Q&A section, which you'll see by hovering or moving your mouse at the bottom of your screen. Type your questions there. If relevant in the moment, I will share them with our presenter or address them myself in that section. And then there will be time at the end of the presentation for Q&A as well. And so I'm so pleased to introduce you to today's presenter, Mike Madroncic, Senior Stakeholder Liaison for the Internal Revenue Service, is with us, with the Communications and Liaison Division, Stakeholder Liaison for the Chicago Field Office. Mike has been with the IRS since 2002, working in the stakeholder liaison position since 2009. Prior to that, he was a revenue agent, SBSE Exam Division in Downers Grove, Illinois. Mike holds degrees in business administration and accounting from Indiana University, an MBA from DePaul University, and is working on completing a Master's of Science in Taxation degree, also from DePaul University. Without further ado, I will pass the mic on, if you will, to Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. I am Mike Madroncic. I do work for the IRS, and as Rebecca mentioned, I work for an organization that's called Stakeholder Liaison. Our job is to create partnerships with organizations such as Build Bronzeville to bring IRS information to the people that these organizations such as Build Bronzeville work with. Budding entrepreneurs, people who are already entrepreneurs and have built their business. So we hope today's presentation will be of benefit to you. It's very important, an important topic. We see, unfortunately, a lot of scams and data thefts at the IRS involving the theft of tax information. That information is used in various ways, but we're also seeing a lot of data thefts from small businesses. And we want to make you aware of the ways you can protect the data that you have on your customers and your business, and ways that you should be on the lookout for. Look out for scams and thefts. So without further ado, let's jump into the presentation. Here's the agenda for today, and we are going to talk about protecting small businesses from scams and thefts, how you can safeguard your business information. We'll take a look at some common scams that the IRS has seen. We'll look at tax-related identity theft, and this involves, for example, a data thief attacking the computer system of a tax professional, for example, and getting information about that tax professional's clients and using that information to file tax returns with the IRS, with those tax returns claiming refunds. That's one type of tax-related identity theft. We'll also talk about ways you can protect yourself with the IRS when you as an individual are filing your tax returns each year. And that's the IRS Identity Protection Opt-in Program. It's a PIN that you can use to identify yourself on the tax return, and it will protect your information and your filing of your returns. We'll also talk about questionable tax return preparers. Unfortunately, we see tax return preparers taking advantage of their clients and stealing refunds, doing other questionable things. We want to make you aware of those. And we'll provide information and resources on how you can prevent online identity theft. So let's get into the meat of the presentation, and we will talk about first safeguarding the information that you have in your business. And we're talking about information stored on computers and also on computer networks that you might be using in your business. One fact that you might be kind of astonished to be made aware of is that most cyber attacks are aimed at small business with less than 100 employees. I think the data thieves probably look at it as, well, the smaller businesses might not have the resources to set up all of the firewalls and all the other important securities that we believe should be in place. So that's probably one reason why they're attacking small businesses. Now, the IRS urges businesses to remain vigilant against cyber attacks that are aimed at stealing your customers' personal financial information, not just financial information, but personal information and other business data that these thieves can use to commit fraud. Now, small businesses should safeguard their customer data by becoming aware of phishing emails. This is one really important way that the data thieves try to get information from you. When we'll talk about and give you examples of phishing emails. You also should be aware of impersonation schemes where the fraudsters try to trick you. All of this is based upon trying to trick you into providing information. You should be cautious if someone is claiming to be from the IRS. So if it's IRS specific, remember that the IRS does not initiate contact with taxpayers by email, text message, or social media channels to request personal or financial information. The IRS is never going to do that. Businesses and consumers are also encouraged to send any scams that you see or that you receive that you think are IRS related, where the scammer's trying to convince you that they're from the IRS. And that we have an email address where you can forward that information on. And that email address is phishing. Phishing is spelled PHISHING at irs.gov. All employers should also remain vigilant in regards to one type of scheme that we've seen, where fraudsters will act as an executive in a business organization and send an email to the human resources department asking for information regarding the W-2s that employees receive each year. So a W-2 form is your wage and earnings statement that you receive from your employer if you're an employee each year. So fraudsters have figured out a way to find information about the names of executives within business organizations, and they'll use that information to try to trick the human resource people in that organization to provide that information. We'll go through some of these scams in a few slides. But within your computer system and your computer networks, things that you should be doing is setting up security software and making sure that that security software is going to update automatically. One of the big problems at IRS that we've seen, because when a tax professional is a victim of a fraudster who's gained access to their computer systems, the tax professional will get in contact with the IRS. And one of the big problems that we've seen is that the tax professional fail to set up their security software for their computer systems to automatically update. It's very important to get those automatic updates from your software vendor. Another way that you can secure your customers' data and your data on your computer systems is to back up important files, off-site with either devices that are not connected to the network, such as thumb drives or other devices. The information is going to be stored not just on your computer network and your computers. Another big thing to do is to put in place strong passwords for all devices, making sure that it's not easy to get into the devices that you have set up. Another way to secure your data is to encrypt your devices. Use multi-factor authentication. For example, when you have your bank account, when you want to get in online with your bank, the bank will typically require that you receive a code via text message or an email message that you have to input when you're trying to get into their system. That's multi-factor authentication, and you should have that in place for your systems as well. Now, there's one site on irs.gov that we've set up to kind of be the central storage place for all this information, and that's Identity Theft Central at the very last bullet point down there at the bottom of the screen. Identity Theft Central is your go-to place for all this information that we're going to be talking about here today. You also see on the left-hand side of the screen an IRS publication, 5961, Protect Your Business from Tax Scams. You can go to irs.gov and download that publication. Everything that I'm going to be talking about here today is all free information. So there's no cost. You've already paid for it with your taxes. These are good resources that you can use, excellent resources to protect yourself. So identity theft information specifically for businesses. We do have a website set up within irs.gov specifically for business owners. And a lot of the information I'm going to be talking about here today, you can find on that site. So what is some of the information that we want to convey to you here today to make you help you understand the importance of setting up and understanding about identity theft and setting up good safety precautions for your systems? We want you to know the signs of identity theft, and you see on the left-hand side of the screen information that you can find on irs.gov. Be alert to possible identity theft if you can't e-file a return. So one of the problems that we've had at IRS over the years, the fraudsters have been able to steal identity information and then file a return with the IRS claiming a fraudulent refund. So if you go in and you try to e-file a tax return with the IRS, but it's rejected, that's one indication that of a possible identity theft, and we'll let you know what you need to do in those circumstances. So some of the signs of identity theft are noted there on the left-hand side, but how can you protect your business to prevent that data loss? And over on the right-hand side of the screen, there are some basic steps that we're going to make you aware of over the next few slides. So we are going to go into those. We're going to look at the basic steps that you should take, setting up a data security plan, educating your employees, and then keeping your employer identification numbers current and safe. Let's go to the first screen, talking about the basic steps you should take to protect your business. Install anti-malware and antivirus security software with automatic updates. Again, the emphasis on the automatic updates. enabled on all your devices, laptops, desktops, routers, tablets, phones. Deploy firewall protections on your network. Use responsible passwords with those key provisions noted below. The use of 8 characters, special and alphanumeric characters, unique passwords, protection on wireless devices. Choose multi-factor authentication when available. Encrypt sensitive files and emails with strong password protection. Backup sensitive data to secure an external source not connected to your network that we've talked about. When you've got old computer hard drives and printers that contain sensitive data, destroy those. Another way to protect yourself is to limit access to personal data on your computer system only to those individuals who need to know. And enter personal data only on secure sites with web addresses that don't begin with the HTTPS address. Those are some of the basic steps. Another key part of your plan is to follow a data security plan and set one up. And we have resources to help you and provide guidance to you. The first one is geared towards taxpayer data, so it's speaking more to tax professionals. But data is data, and the information that's included in that publication can help you as well if you're not a tax professional. So that's IRS Publication 4557. You can get it at irs.gov. Again, it's free. But some more inclusive to all small business owners information is available with the following 2 resources. The first one is from the Federal Trade Commission, so you can get this at ftc.gov. And it is a publication that's called Start with Security, a guide for business. And then another really good resource for you is the last item that's listed there. And this is coming from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And this is actually an organization within the U.S. Department of Commerce. But the website where you can get this information is NIST.gov. That's NIST.gov. And it is the publication that's described as the Small Business Information Security, the Fundamentals. So if you don't have the resources to go out and get experts and professionals who work in this field to help you set up a data security plan, there's information that's available to you for free with these resources. Another great way to protect yourself and your computer system is to educate your employees. You can share information with them that's in this publication 4524, Security Awareness, Taxpayer Guide to Identity Theft. You can provide employees with basic data security information and practices, and the examples listed below. Make everyone aware in your organization to be aware of phishing emails, and we'll go through some examples over the next few slides. Phishing emails are the most common tactic used to steal data. Don't respond to suspicious or unknown emails. If you can set up your email system that flags emails that are coming from outside your organization, that's a great way to set up that firewall. Now, we mentioned earlier that if these phishing emails that you receive, if they're IRS related, where they're trying to trick you into believing that they're from the IRS, you can forward those on to the phishing@irs.gov email address that you see there in the middle of the screen. Another important key is to never open or download attachments from unknown senders, even potential clients. We've seen at IRS tax professionals tricked into thinking that someone is a potential client, and they trick the tax professional into thinking that the attachment is some information about their their tax situation, and when they open it up, it downloads malware onto their computer systems. Always verify that the email is authentic by calling the individual. Only email documents that are password protected and encrypted. There we're talking about email documents that include attachments of information that is personal. So only email documents, and that's those situations that are password protected and encrypted. Use separate personal and business email accounts, and protect your email accounts with strong passwords and two-factor authentication that we've discussed. Those are ways to educate your employees. Another way to keep your information safe is to keep your employer identification numbers. That's what the EIN acronym is. Keep those current and safe with the IRS. You get an employer identification number from the IRS. Not all business owners need to get employer identification numbers. That's typically if you have employees, and that's when you're getting an employer identification number. But if you go to irs.gov and search for employer identification number, you'll come up to a site that identifies everything you need to know about employer identification numbers, including those employers that do need employer identification numbers. But keep those EINs current and safe, and you can update the EIN information. You see that form 8822-B. And then again, you can get that form at irs.gov. And that is a change of address or responsible party form. So you always want the most current information available and given to the IRS so that the IRS information has that information.
Question, Mike. The question is, can scammers file taxes with just the EIN?
That's on a business side, that is possible. So that's why we're asking everyone to keep their EIN information on file at IRS up to date.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we talked about the fact that we want to make you aware of some of the common scams that are out there that we have seen, so that you are aware and you're educated, and you can educate your employees as well. So let's go through this list, and we're going to talk about those that you see on the screen. We'll talk about tax-related identity theft, and it has evolved over the years into a major enterprise that is funded by highly technical national and international criminal syndicates. So the IRS sees thousands of fraudulent tax scams each year, and these scams tend to rise during tax season and also during times of crisis like the COVID crisis. Now, the one thing that the IRS does do to try to make everyone aware of these scams is to come out each year with an annual list of scams that the IRS calls the Dirty Dozen. You can go to irs.gov and search a Dirty Dozen, and you'll come up with the most current list for 2024. Now, on this slide, we're talking about the phishing scams that we've mentioned briefly so far. We'll talk about the malware scams as well. The email, the phishing scams, the fake emails that we've been talking about, these are email communications that, for example, if it's they're trying to trick you into thinking it's from the IRS, they'll include any logos, things to try to make you aware or believe that this is coming from the IRS. These emails are what we call the phishing schemes. They're designed to trick the reader into providing things like login credentials, bank account numbers, passwords. If there's links in the, well, as we've mentioned, you want to pass these emails on to the IRS at that phishing email address that we've brought up and we'll bring up again at the end of the presentation. If there's links in the emails, don't click on the links. These links will take you to malicious websites, and the goal of these emails, again, is to trick you into providing personal information. IRS also sees fake charities where criminals frequently exploit natural disasters and other situations like the pandemic. They set up fake charities and trick people into making donations and provide their personal financial information. Another scam is threatening impersonator phone calls. These phone calls, scammers regularly call taxpayers and impersonate the IRS, especially around tax season. They claim to be IRS employees, and they use aggressive tactics and threats to trick people into paying fake IRS debts. The callers use fake IRS names and bogus IRS badge numbers, and they may already know details about their targets. So the calls do seem legitimate. They'll do research on the internet, find names, titles if you're part of an organization, phone numbers, email addresses, responsibilities within the organization. They'll use all the information that's out on the internet to try to trick you into providing information. They can also alter caller ID to make it look like it's the IRS calling. So here's two examples of calls that you should be aware of. In the first call, a victim is told that they owe money to the IRS, and it's got to be paid immediately through a preloaded debit card or a wire transfer. Always understand that the IRS does not accept payments on preloaded card or wire transfers. The second type of call is the victims are told that they have a refund due, and the caller will try to trick you into sharing your bank account number so the refund can be direct deposited into that account. The call's fake and the refund is fake, so don't get tricked into providing personal bank account information. And also remember that scammers change their tactics. Criminals impersonating IRS agents remain a major threat to taxpayers, so everyone's got to be alert. Now let's talk about refund theft. This is, specific to the IRS or, the state of Illinois. There's also a number of scams centered around this. Most refund fraud stems from identity theft. I mentioned earlier, a fraudster will somehow get into a computer system and steal identity information and then use that identity information to file a fraudulent tax return with, for example, the state of Illinois or the IRS. And on that return, they're going to claim, again, a fraudulent refund. Always be aware that scams target non-English speakers as well. IRS impersonators and other scammers target groups with limited English proficiency based upon, their foreign-sounding last name. In those calls, they threaten to bring in local police, immigration officers, or other law enforcement to have them arrested if they don't pay up. These are fraudulent calls as well. And finally, we'll have unscrupulous return preparers, and we'll talk about them in detail towards the end of the presentation. Dishonest preparers pop up every filing season. They typically promise inflated refunds by claiming on the tax returns that they're preparing fake tax credits like education credits or an earned income tax credit, where those credits are refundable. And for example, if I owed $500 before the tax credits, but the tax credits amounted to $1,000, the tax credit the difference between the 1,000 and the 500, that $500 difference would be a refund to me. And that's one way that bad return preparers, inflate those refunds and commit fraud. Again, we'll talk about that towards the end of the presentation. So let's get into phishing emails, specific information about phishing emails. Those phishing emails, those emails ask you to confirm personal information. Now, the web and the email addresses on those emails, they don't look genuine. You can see, for example, if the email is purporting to trying to make you believe it's coming from the IRS, and you look at the email address of the sender, you won't see a .irs.gov in the address of the email sender. So always take a look at those email addresses and make sure that they're genuine. Of course, again, the IRS is not going to be sending you an email, looking for information. Another way to spot the phishing emails is that it's typically poorly written. There's misspellings, bad grammar, and there's also probably a suspicious attachment. I mentioned just a minute ago, we've seen situations where, in our example, the tax professional was sent an email and it included an attachment, and that tax professional thought it was from a possible new client, clicked on that attachment, and unfortunately fell into a situation where malware was downloaded onto their computer systems. Always be aware of suspicious attachments. And another way that you can spot a phishing email is that the message is designed to make you panic, to take action, to provide information, to send a payment. So always look out for those ways to spot phishing emails and be aware of them. Remember, again, the IRS specifically is never going to contact you by email, text, or social media to ask you for personal financial data. Call to demand immediate. The IRS, again, will never call to demand immediate payment using a prepaid debit card, gift card, or wire transfer. The IRS is never going to threaten to bring in the police, immigration, or other agencies to have you arrested. The IRS is not going to ask for debit or credit card or other financial account information over the phone. And the IRS is not going to request login credentials. So those are specific to IRS inquiries and IRS communications. Now, we also want you to be aware of signs of tax-related identity theft. We mentioned up at the beginning of the presentation the situation where if you're e-filing your return with the IRS and it rejects due to duplicate Social Security numbers, meaning that the IRS has already received a tax return with your Social Security number on it. That is one indication that you may be a victim of tax-related identity theft. Or you may get a letter from the IRS inquiring about a suspicious tax return that you know you did not file. Those are situations you should be aware of and may be an indicator that you're a victim of tax-related identity theft. Another way that you should take notice and be aware and be concerned is if you get an IRS notice, and that notice says that you owe additional tax or a refund offset, or that you've had a collection action taken against you for a year you did not file a tax return. There's something wrong there. And that notice, that IRS notice, will give you a phone number to get in contact with somebody. Another sign of tax-related identity theft is if you receive a Form W-2 or a 1099 from an employer that you didn't work for. So the Form W-2 is if you're an employee, you receive it at the end of the year from your employer. It identifies the wages that you earned during the year. A Form 1099, if you're what they call an independent contractor. So you worked for an organization, but you weren't an employee, but you did some independent contracting work for that organization. That organization is supposed to send you the Form 1099 at the end of the year that identifies the amount of income you receive from them. If you've received these forms, but you know you didn't work for that organization, that could be an indication that you've been a victim of identity theft. And what we have showing up here on this next screen are two publications that talk about the information that we've presented. That's publication 4524, Security Awareness for Taxpayers. So it's providing a lot of the information that we've discussed to help you understand how you can protect yourself. And then there's identity theft information for taxpayers. If you think you've been a victim of identity theft, in those examples we just went over, there's information there to help you get through the process, including how to get in contact with the IRS and other government agencies that can help you through the process and help you get things situated and righted. So on this screen, we're going to talk now about tax scams. We've been talking about identity theft, phishing. Now we're going to be talking about scams that have been the IRS has seen and that we're going to make you aware of. So in addition to those threats that we've talked about from identity thieves, there's also scammers who present these tax scams to you as a way to trick you into providing information. One of those you may have heard of. During the pandemic, there was a employee retention credit that allowed employers to get a credit from the federal government, a tax credit, if they kept employees on during the pandemic. And that credit was a certain percentage of the wages paid to those employees that they kept on during the pandemic. You've probably heard a lot about, there have been a lot of tax scammers who have tricked and a lot of small business owners into putting in questionable employee retention credit claims. So if you wanted the employee retention credit, you had to claim it on a form and send that form into the IRS. There's also another common scam involving a tax credit, and that's called the false fuel tax credit claim. This is another tax credit that employers can apply for from the federal government. This is available only for off-highway business and farming use and not for most taxpayers. But the scammers will try to convince business owners that aren't involved and cannot qualify for this tax credit that they can qualify, and will help them submit false tax credit claims to the IRS. You should also be aware of bad tax advice that is out there on social media. You can report these scams, these tax scams, to the IRS. There is an IRS form, and it's Form 14242. That's Form 14242, and it's how to report suspected abusive tax promotions or preparers. The instructions on the form, again, you can get it at irs.gov. The instructions will tell you how to complete it and how to send it in to the IRS. So again, we mentioned there were a lot of scams during COVID. those could have been reported to the government at that hotline. And if you run into scams, fraud, refund, or economic impact payment thefts, and economic impact payment was another benefit that was made available during COVID, you can get in contact with the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. The acronym is TIGTA, and you can make those reports online at that address noted in the very last line there. That's the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. Unsolicited emails and social media attempts to gather information that appear to be from either the IRS or an organization closely linked to IRS should not be opened. Don't open them. Instead, forward them to phishing@irs.gov. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we do have that one-stop resource, identitytheft.gov. Identitytheft.gov. That you can learn all about more details about the information that we're going over here today in the hour that we have. I mentioned for individual taxpayers, we have a program to help you secure your federal tax return with the IRS and secure your identity and try to make sure that fraudulent returns are not filed using your Social Security number. And that's the IRS IP PIN opt-in program. IP PIN. Identity protection is what IP stands for. And PIN is just a personal identification number. So it's an identity protection personal identification number. And it's an opt-in program that any taxpayer can use. The IP PIN program helps prevent identity thief from filing a tax return with your Social Security number. It's a 6-digit number. You're going to get it each year that you file a tax return from the IRS, and you can get it online. It's a free service. And as the last bullet point says, as of January of 2021, all taxpayers throughout the United States who can verify their identities. So it is a process. You have to go in and register. Again, this is all online at irs.gov. If you could verify your identity through that process, you can obtain an IP PIN, and this can help you protect your tax return and your filing with the IRS.
Excuse me, question.
Uh-huh.
Can you get a PIN for your business as well, or is it just for personal use?
Right now, it's just for personal use,
Okay.
unfortunately.
And thanks for the question.
But if you're, filing a Schedule C, and that Schedule C is part of your individual tax return, a Schedule C is for sole proprietors, even some who have a
Sole member
limited
LLCs.
a single member limited liability company.
Yes.
You're filing an individual return, and you can get the IP PIN.
Oh, that's good to know, because we have a number of entrepreneurs who have sole member LLCs. Thanks for
Right.
making that point.
So it is a one-time registration process. It's free. It's on irs.gov. You will get you need to get a new IP PIN every January. And that again is online through irs.gov. And you can actually review the process to take a look at it. If you want to get involved and get an IP PIN, go to irs.gov/IP PIN. You'll be able to review the process. Some keys with the IP PIN. Don't share it with anyone but your trusted tax provider. Now, if you do your own taxes, enter the IP PIN when it's asked by your software product. For example, if you're using TurboTax. And the last important point, No one's going to call, email, or text you to request your IP PIN. Don't give it out. Only with your trusted tax provider if you're using a trusted tax provider. Here are some IRS publications where you can get more information about it. In addition to just going to irs.gov at that site that I identified. And now we want to talk about trusted tax return preparers, or in our case, we're going to talk about, unfortunately, questionable tax return preparers. Unfortunately, we do see these individuals. One thing you should be aware of, that there is no federal law that requires a tax return preparer who's helping you prepare your return to have a certain level of education or to have passed a certain test. There are tax preparers who have passed tests, such as a certified public accountant or something, another tax professional designation called an enrolled agent. Enrolled agents have passed a test that's given specifically by the IRS on federal tax law and federal tax procedure. Certified public accountants have passed a test given by a state board where part of the test does include identifying their understanding and mastery of tax law. So those are two ways that an individual can identify a credential or get a credential that shows their expertise and their education and their knowledge. But the vast majority of tax professionals do not have these qualifications. And we'll show you a resource to help you go in and find tax professionals who do have these credentials and qualifications. But what we're talking about on this slide are the questionable tax return preparers and indicators that you may be working with a questionable tax return preparer. One indicator is that the tax return preparer requires payment in cash only and won't provide you with a receipt. That tax return preparer will guarantee you a refund or charges fees based upon the size of the refund that the tax return shows. Another indicator of a questionable tax return preparer is that return preparer invents income to qualify their clients for tax credits. Remember that the tax return you file with the IRS is your tax return, even if you've had a preparer help you prepare it. Make sure that the numbers on that return, that you understand and agree with those numbers. It is your return, and the IRS will look to you if they're doing an audit and if there are questions. Now, if the tax return preparer did questionable things, the IRS will also look at the tax return preparer. But in the end, make sure that your tax return, you agree with the information on that return before it's filed with the IRS. Another indicator of a questionable tax return preparer is that on that return, they claim fake deductions and or tax credits to boost the size of the income, or a refund, excuse me, I'm sorry. Some other indicators that you've got a questionable return preparer. They're directing the refund into their bank account and not your bank account. Always make sure that you identify on that return where the refund is going, if you're getting a refund. Now, one thing that a tax return preparer who's preparing a return for compensation has to have is a preparer tax identification number, or a PTIN. They get that from the IRS, and they've got to get either a new one, or they have to renew one that they've received already on an annual basis. They've got to identify their preparer tax identification number on your return. If they don't do that, you've got a questionable tax return preparer. And finally, another indicator is that they won't sign the return. They've got to, as a paid preparer, sign the tax return that's being filed with the IRS. Now, one way you can help yourself and how you can get information to make a good selection of a tax return preparer is go to irs.gov, use the search term how to choose a return preparer. And what you're seeing right now is another publication that gives you some tips to avoid tax time scams. They are the tips that we've gone over during the presentation already. This is one page of the publication, and this is the second page. So, coming up with a summation of what we've gone over here today. To prevent online identity theft, don't respond to suspicious IRS emails, text, or faxes. Secure your computers. Use strong passwords. Back up critical personal information on resources outside of your network, such as hard drives external to your network, thumb drives. Make sure you secure those. Limit the personal information you provide on social media. Scam artists, identity thieves use the information that's on social media to get information to help them commit these crimes. Some of the other places you can go to get more information: irs.gov/ID theft, staysafeonline.org, and onguardonline.gov. We mentioned the Identity Theft Central, irs.gov/identity theft. Security Summit is just the IRS and other organizations such as the state of Illinois, other states across the country, the tax software companies that work together to try to combat identity theft and refund fraud. So the key points to stay abreast of what's going on with the tax scams that are out there, go to irs.gov, use the search term Dirty Dozen. Remember, IRS doesn't initiate contact by email, text, or social media. You can report scams and thefts to the appropriate authorities. Sign up and use the IP PIN that's available. And remember, don't share the IP PIN if you do choose to use that PIN. Some other key points here, including the publications that you can go to get information. And with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us here today, and especially Rebecca for having us here. We really appreciate the opportunity to bring the information to you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Mike. Would you click on the next slide that has our contact information for both of our organizations? Yes, thank you. So wonderful session. Many thanks to Mike for a very thorough and informative presentation on how you can avoid these scams. It's really ridiculous how thorough, I guess, people have become in scamming. It's unfortunate, but at least we have the knowledge so that we can protect ourselves as much as possible. So thanks again, Mike. Before I talk about how you can connect with us, please let us know if you have final questions. I thank you for the questions that we got earlier, and they've been addressed, but any more questions before we close? Okay, that looks like it may be it. If you are not already connected to us as a client, there's the information for the Illinois SBDC at Build Bronzeville, email, website, and phone. Ultimately, if you sign up to become a client, you'll need to visit that website and follow the prompts to complete the client sign up. And then you can reach out to Mike at the IRS. Email is there. You can also visit the website as well as the many other sites that were shared in today's presentation. And then you can also give them a call at the number listed there. You will receive a recording of today's session along with a survey. Please complete the survey because your feedback allows us to get insight to provide you with the most relevant training so you can continue to excel in business. Thanks again for your time and attention today. And here's to staying safe, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.